Hello friends, in this video tutorial, let us see Reporting Services Configuration Manager in SSRS. So for this, let us go to the Reporting Services Configuration Manager tool. Now, over here, we can see the server name, right? And in this particular tab, you can stop or start the services, okay? Now, if you go to service account, then this is the account using which the reporting services service inside Windows. It is acting as a Windows service. So this particular Windows account will be used to run the reporting services service. So let us go and see services.msc. Okay. Now over here, go to SQL Server, right? And go to reporting services. So this is my reporting services that I am referring to right now. And we can see this is the account that is used, and the same account is shown when we come to reporting services, right? If you want, you can even use another user account. Now it is typically recommended that you use a domain user account having all the necessary access level privileges over the network and on the database. Okay, so that is a recommended practice. Okay, and as far as possible, you should try not to use local machine accounts, because local machine accounts will face some issues, some problems when accessing network resources. Okay, so that's why it is a recommended practice that you use a domain user accounts which have got necessarily access privileges over the network, because they have network logon permissions, right? And if you use the local user accounts, then you will have to add additional permissions for those local user accounts. Then only things will work which over the network, like getting in, let's say, image over a network share path, something like that, to show in report, right? So these are the different things. Other options you can use, like network service. You can use it. It has got a default logon permission on the network, right? So that can you use. But try to avoid these two local accounts, like local service and local system accounts, as far as possible, because as I already mentioned, they may require additional access privileges to be granted, right? So that's why it's always better to go for domain accounts. Now, web service URL. Now we have discussed this in earlier video tutorials also multiple times, that this is the URL that you use for configuring in the SSDT, okay, for deployment of reports developed in SSDT on the report server, right? And if you click this, then you can navigate to different reports which have already been deployed. Okay, so you can go and just run any of the reports, right? Now this is actually the URL through which the end users are served the reports. Okay, so let's go back. Whereas report manager URL, now we have already gone through the report manager URL in detail in our last video tutorial, but let me just mention that this is the URL through which you configure different options for your reports, configuration options for your reports. Okay, so this is the, and this is kind of URL for the developers, okay, for the report managers, administrators and developers, right? Whereas end users will be served the reports using the report server URL, that is the web service URL. Okay, fine, this is the URL. Now, so this is all about these two URLs. Now database. Now once you install reporting services, at that time you whatever database you have specified will be shown over here. If you want, you can even go and change the database. Okay, so if you want, you can change the database for the reporting server. Now which database are we referring to? Report server $server1 2014. So let me go to my database engine. So if we are talking about database engine, then this is the database that we are referring to. Okay, so this database is the database that is actually referred over here, and if you want, you can change the database and its associated MDB, okay, through this particular screen. Okay, now if you can even change the credentials used to access the database, right? Now email settings. Now if you have a SMTP server on your configured, then you can provide that settings over here. It will be used to send emails, let's say for subscriptions, right? So this can be used for subscriptions also to send the emails. Okay, so if you go to the report manager, let's say you go to subscription, right, manage, and then let's say you go to over here, then you can configure subscriptions over here, and one of the types can be email, and which email configuration will be referred. This is the email configuration that will be referred, okay, over there. Now execution account. Now if you want to run your reports in unattended way, you can specify execution account information over here. Ideally, your execution account information should, or the execution account that you use should be different from the service account that you use, okay, for security purposes, right? And this is the account that will be used whenever there is unattended execution of the report. So, and also, and under multiple circumstances, this account can be used. Like, let's say if your report is referring to some images and those images are lying on a network share, right? So this account can be used. Also, let's say the images are lying on a different HTTP URL, and that URL requires username and password, then this account will be used over there, okay? So in this way, in order to connect to data sources as well as for getting images, right, static resources like images over the network, like using HTTP protocol, and if HTTP site requires username and password, then this execution account can be provided by the reporting server, okay, for extracting the data. So in this way, execution account can be used at multiple places. Now let us go to encryption keys. Now this is very important. If you are migrating your report server database, that is this database, from one physical server to another physical server, then the first thing that you should do is backup the encryption key, okay, because all your credentials, all your username, passwords, right, all this confidential information inside the reports are stored in the report server database in an encrypted way, and the encryption key that is used by the server, it needs to be backed up by coming over here, okay? So you should first of all back up the encryption key, and then once you transfer your report server database to another physical server, then you should use the restore button to restore the encryption key. Then only you can get all that data, confidential data, on the next server, in the migrated or the different server to where you have taken your report server database, okay? So in the new server, you will get all the confidential information like username, passwords and all, only if you had first of all backed up the encryption key, and then after restoring the report server database, you also restored the encryption key, then only you will get the access to that data, okay? So this is a very important thing, okay? If you want, you can even change the encryption key currently being used by the report server database and delete the encrypted content also, right? Now scale out deployment. Now this is also very important. Now we can see that right now we have only one installation, right, of reporting services on this machine, and it has already configured our first PC as part of the scale out deployment. You can see my reporting server instance is server 1 2014. Now this is already part of the scale out deployment and the status is joined, okay, right? Now if we have another reporting services installation, then in order to do scale out deployment, that is two URLs serving the same reports, what we need to do, let's say we have another instance called server 2 2014, or simply let's say server 2, then what you need to do, you need to first of all install the server 2 reporting services, then go to database section for server 2, change the database and make it point to the first server, that is server 1 2014's database. So this database should be referred by the second instance also, okay? So now both the instances will be referring to the same common database, okay? Then you again come back to the first server, that is this server, go over here and stop and start the service again, so that once you stop and start the service and come back to the deployment, then it will again, the second server will be shown over here, okay? The second server entry will be shown over here, and then you can click the add server button to just join that new server into the scale out deployment. Now using the scale out deployment, you can achieve load balancing load balancing for your reports. That is, you can have same reports getting served using multiple URLs. Okay, so this is also a very important option, and I hope the steps are clear. First is install the second instance, make the second instance use the first database of the first instance, go to the first instance, restart the service, that is stop and start over here, and then again come back to the deployment for the first instance, and then over here the second instance will be shown. So you just click the add server button, and then the scale out deployment for both these instances will be done. Okay, so these are some of the options that we can configure using reporting services configuration manager. And I hope, friends, this video tutorial is useful to you. Thank you.